I'm Todd Yeary. Welcome to this week's edition of Due Process. This week, Senate Democrats unveiled their latest proposal to protect voting rights. The bill, entitled the Freedom to Vote Act, would enhance voting options, expand voter identification requirements, allow for same-day voter registration on Election Day, and increase access to mail-in ballots. The bill would also constrain partisan gerrymandering by requiring that the drawing of legislative districts meet certain criteria, while allowing some options for how the districts might be drawn, including reliance upon independent commissions to do so. The Freedom to Vote Act has the support of Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, who has to date stymied the Democratic majority's efforts to pass critical legislation such as voting rights and the human infrastructure package. However, Senate Republicans are unlikely to support the bill as they attempt to reinforce individual states' rights to run and manage elections and oppose any attempt to restrict how states draw legislative maps. Due to the current stalemate on revising the filibuster, without the support of at least 10 Senate Republicans, the bill will likely not move forward without getting rid of the filibuster altogether, or at least modifying the filibuster rule to allow for certain pieces of legislation to move to the floor on a simple majority vote. We will continue to keep you updated as the fight for voting rights continues. You can do your part by reaching out to your U.S. Senator and demand that they repeal the filibuster rule and pass substantive, comprehensive voting rights legislation now. 2 weeks ago, I shared the story of Julius Jones, the Oklahoma man who was convicted of killing Paul Howell in Edmond, Oklahoma in 1999 and is now on death row. The Oklahoma Pardon and Parole Board granted Mr. Jones a commutation hearing that was held on September 13th as originally scheduled.
Commutation is recommended.
On Monday, the Pardon and Parole Board recommended that Julius Jones's sentence be commuted to a life sentence because of doubts about his guilt in Howell's killing. Jones was only 19 at the time he began serving time on death row. Now 41 years old, Julius Jones has spent more than half of his life in prison, awaiting execution for a crime he did not commit. With the commutation recommendation, there is a glimmer of hope that progress might be made in Julius's case. This week, Reverend Jackson sent a letter to Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt, encouraging him to endorse the recommendation of the Pardon and Parole Board in the interest of justice. Rainbow Push Coalition will continue to actively encourage Governor Stitt to do what is right and commute Julius Jones's sentence. Adam Smith, the political economist known as the father of capitalism, asserted that the wealth of nations was tied to two fundamental values: land, or property, and labor, the ability to earn wages sufficient to acquire and build wealth. However, we know from history that wages were often unpaid or denied certain people, and land was often taken by force or coercion. That's why this next story is so important. In 1912, during what some call the early genesis of Jim Crow in America, Willa and Charles Bruce, who had migrated from New Mexico, purchased 2 parcels of land in Manhattan Beach, California. Though there were segregation policies in effect at the time prohibiting certain property transfers, real estate developer George Peck decided to sell the parcels to the Bruces. From this investment, the Bruces built a beachfront lodge with a cafe, dance hall, cabanas, and bathing suit rentals. The lodge is considered the first resort for African Americans on the West Coast and opened during a time when many Jim Crow laws barred blacks from the beaches. In 1924, the Manhattan Beach City Council condemned the lodge and other nearby black-owned properties by imposing eminent domain under the guise of building a public park. In reality, according to public records, white neighbors resented the resort's growing popularity and prosperity of its African American owners. The families filed suit, charging that they were victims of a racially motivated campaign to remove them from their land. The Bruces were awarded $14,500, but their lodge was demolished, and the couple's economic and entrepreneurial genius was prevented any opportunity to restore the business they worked so hard to build. The beachfront that was once available to blacks because of the Bruces' business savvy was now off limits to all except whites. The city eventually turned the park over to the state of California, which later transferred the property to Los Angeles County to oversee maintenance of the site. However, in 2007, then Mayor Mitch Ward, who was at that time the only black elected official in the history of Manhattan Beach, helped to rename the site Bruce's Beach Park. In the wake of the calls for racial justice and restitution for damages inflicted upon people of color, LA County Board member Janice Hahn began to explore how to repair the damage and make the Bruces whole. Regulations had precluded the county from being able to transfer ownership of the property without a change in state law. On September 9th, the California State Senate passed a bill that would give LA County the authority to transfer 2 parcels of land to the descendants of Willa and Charles Bruce. The California Assembly passed the same bill the day before. Governor Gavin Newsom, who this week survived a recall effort, is expected to sign the bill and finally pave the way for the dream of Willa and Charles Bruce to be revived. We will stay tuned to see justice finally won for the Bruce family. The National Football League took another step toward expanding diversity and inclusion in the officiating ranks this week. On Sunday, Maya Chaka made history as the first black woman to officiate an NFL game when she took the field for the New York Jets versus Carolina Panthers game in Charlotte. A health and physical education teacher in Virginia, Chaka rose through the ranks of the Pac-12 Conference and Conference USA and had a brief stint in the Alliance of American Football in 2019. Maya Chaka is also committed to serving her community through her work with at-risk youth. A past Teacher of the Year, Maya Chaka continues to leave a trailblazing path for other women and girls of color to follow. Congratulations to Maya Chaka and the NFL for continuing to remove barriers to opportunity in professional football. Finally, we celebrate with World War II veteran Lawrence Brooks on the occasion of his 112th birthday on September 12th. Brooks served in the predominantly African-American 91st Engineer Battalion, which stationed in New Guinea and the Philippines during the war. The father of 5 and bonus dad to 5 children, Brooks was celebrated in New Orleans with a Jeep parade, birthday cake, and musical tributes from local bands. We say happy birthday to Lawrence Brooks. Thank you for your service, and we pray for your continued strength and good health. And that is this week's Due Process. For more information on these issues and other areas of our work, visit rainbowpush.org. I'm Todd Yeary.